Welcome to CivilNet. Joining me via Skype from Los Angeles is Aram Kouyoumdjian. He is a theater critic, a playwright, and a director. Aram, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be with you, Maya.
It is 2015, the centennial year of the Armenian genocide. That was a great schism that, among other things, we can admit or say resulted in the gradual loss of the Western Armenian language. You recently wrote a really fascinating paper about the three centuries of Western Armenian theater from Constantinople to Los Angeles. If you could very briefly talk to us about the motivation, the objective, what was it that you were trying to say with that paper?
I think it's really important to understand the roots of what I would consider diasporan theater. There are a lot of challenges in contemporary diasporan theater, and if we look back to the history of that theater and its roots back in Constantinople in the 19th century, we start comprehending why current Armenian theater, diasporan theater, struggles with the issues that it faces and that arrest its development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you spoke about Armenian theater in the 19th century, in the mid-1800s in Constantinople, or Bolis as we say, which is modern-day Istanbul. And some of the information that you provide in that paper was really quite interesting about how Armenians were really on the cutting edge of theater in the Ottoman Empire. And then we had the Armenian genocide and the creation of Armenian communities primarily in the Middle East. And for most of us who have been born and raised in the diaspora know that Lebanon or Beirut and Aleppo were the real centers of Armenian culture and literature. And then you spoke about Hamaskayin theater in Lebanon. Does that tradition continue today in the Middle East, or is Beirut also another victim of the civil war there, of circumstances in the Middle East?
The tradition has not stopped in the Middle East. Obviously, there is still a somewhat thriving community in Lebanon, and both the Hamaskayin theater troupe as well as others continue to perform there. And there's still a venue there called the Hagopter Melkonian Theater that belongs to Armenians and that is quite active. However, if we compare it to its heyday, the cultural production and activity in theater specifically has certainly plummeted in Beirut, and it would be difficult to say that that's where the future lies. And that's one of the things that my article probed, is where does the future of Western Armenian theater lie?
And then you spoke about Los Angeles as now the next very large, vibrant, active Armenian community. And yet, even there, Western Armenian plays are not being written, are not being performed perhaps as much or as much as they could be. What is the reason? Is it the loss of the language? Is it an entertainment sort of culture that doesn't allow theater to thrive, Armenian theater to thrive?
So you're right. I describe Los Angeles as more of a promise for where Western Armenian theater can go rather than what it really is now, because it certainly hasn't fulfilled that promise yet. And that's where we kind of get into the Constantinople connection. We have to see where this theater started and what some of its constraints were. And if we look at Los Angeles as a place for Armenian theater now, we see a lot of similarities with what was going on in Constantinople 2 centuries ago. An over-reliance on comedies, farces, really light fare, no inclination to really explore contemporary issues confronting the community, an over-reliance on translated material. Those are very much in keeping with what was happening half a world away a couple of centuries ago.
And what was it? I mean, you know, there are so many, we always say that we have so many stories to tell. We have an abundance of history that allows us to do that. Our contemporary issues, like you said, that communities throughout the diaspora face, and certainly the one in Los Angeles faces as well. Is it because it's not profitable, or there isn't the interest, perhaps?
I think there are inherent challenges to staging plays, aside from the writing of it, which obviously a poet and a novelist would struggle with as much as a playwright would. It's not simply about publication. At some point, the staging requires so many resources, starting with a venue, with all sorts of design elements, a cast capable of performing the piece, and of course, funding. So to bring all of those together has been quite a challenge for the Armenian community throughout the diaspora and history.
Do we expect too much of our communities? I mean, you're right, it's not about publishing a book or creating a painting, because that's one individual that's telling his or her story through that medium. When we're talking about when we're talking about theater, it is a huge production. And again, the question lies, for example, in Los Angeles, is there an Armenian theater that's dedicated only to Armenian productions?
There is no venue, unfortunately. Even in a community of this size and this level of affluence, we've managed to build many, many schools and community centers and churches, but no one has prioritized a theater venue sufficiently for us to acquire one or to build one. So that's quite a challenge, just finding a place to perform works. And it's sort of like that saying, if you build it, they will come. No one has built it yet, so that's quite a challenge. There's only one standing company that does a couple of plays a year. However, it consists mostly of volunteers, so they're not really professional paid actors who do this for a living.
Yeah. I think that in the diaspora, the evolution of our diasporan communities, we are now moving away from volunteerism toward a more professional approach, and the theater is one that requires that. But besides the venue and building it so that they will come, are there people who are capable today of writing plays in Western Armenian? As I said in the beginning of our conversation, Western Armenian language is in danger of being lost today, because even our schools in the diaspora are having difficulty bringing the students that level of the language, which they will then be able to translate into writing, and writing plays is no easy task, I would imagine. How do we confront that?
Absolutely it's absolutely a challenge, the issue of the language, because not only are there very few people writing in Western Armenian, there are very few trained actors able to perform in it. So you get a situation where even if you generate a script, will you be able to find a talented enough cast who's trained sufficiently as actors to be able to perform it? There are some wonderful Armenian actors in Los Angeles who don't necessarily speak the language, and there are some wonderful speakers of the language who are not necessarily trained as actors. So it goes back to what is a playwright's motivation. A playwright would be motivated to write if they knew they had a producer, a venue, and a cast all ready to go, and we don't have that infrastructure in place. We don't have those elements in place to really inspire playwrights. So we get caught in this catch-22 where they're not inclined to write it because they don't think it's going to be performed, and the people who would be willing to put it on are lacking the scripts in order to motivate them.
It really is a very difficult situation. I mean, my next question, for which I really wonder if you have an answer to, is what can be done?
I think a lot can be done, and I think it starts with institutional support. We do have organizations, whether it be համաձայն, whether it be the AGPU's artistic and cultural wings, that can invest resources and funding in this endeavor. As I mentioned earlier, obviously we can sustain schools, obviously we can sustain a lot of institutions in our community, so why couldn't we sustain a theater? Certainly. So that institutional support is very important. Developing a cadre of producers would be very helpful. The individuals who could provide the organizational support for artists to do their own thing, and also developing some sort of academy, some sort of training ground where, utilizing the very many American resources around us, we can tailor, we can custom make a program, a theater training program for Armenian artists.
Yeah, certainly an interesting approach. Diaspora doesn't exist in a vacuum. What can the Republic of Armenia do? What can be those bridges that could perhaps assist Armenian American, Armenian European, Armenian Lebanese actors, producers to bring it to the next level? Could there be some kind of cooperation that would assist the diaspora?
There should absolutely be. Համաձայն has taken a step toward that by hosting the Sos Sarkisian theater ensemble in a pair of theater festivals that took place in 2013 and just a couple of weeks ago. So we've had opportunities to have artists from Armenia visit here. Perhaps we should be really expanding that notion to think, can we have artists in residence working with actors and playwrights and designers here, or possibly have individuals from here visit Armenia in some sort of exchange or apprenticeship or training program, so that the lines of communication are built upon and expanded, rather than having it be just a visit that doesn't serve as a building ground.
Yeah, well, that's certainly something to think about and something to encourage. Aram, thank you for being a voice, sometimes in the wilderness, to preserve and develop Armenian theater in the diaspora. And we look forward to many more productions. You know, you are an Ellie Award winner for playwriting and directing. So we hope that we can find those bridges that would assist both Armenia and the diaspora in this most important endeavor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest was playwright, theater critic, and director Aram Kouyoumdjian from Los Angeles. Stay with CivilNet.